everyone. Welcome to the Lawyer Lifter podcast, or Mel's Minutes, where I talk about lifting, life, and business. Hi, everyone. Today's episode is with Mike Shea, the owner and operator of the Busy Parents Dietitian. And he has been my registered dietitian, my fitness nutritionist for well over a year. And we are going to be talking today about the next phase of my nutrition on the way to the platform. Hi everyone, it's been a minute, and I know that Mike Shea has been on this podcast before, but that was when I was pregnant, and here we are almost 11 months postpartum, and Mike has continued to be with me, and it's actually a pivotal point now because I'm 2 weeks out from my first competition, coming back from pregnancy and postpartum, delivering winter, and trying to qualify for nationals, which is happening in the first week of September. So I've actually never ever not competed except COVID when in 2020, but I just kept training and training because at the time, like, nobody knew whether any of the federations would just go ahead and do some kind of comp. So it was almost like an artificial being like training, but also being ready. This would be the first time during my pregnancy and postpartum, probably like well over a year, I haven't trained to compete and competed. So Mike is here. One of the big things that I wanted to talk about is just I can speak to this, and I know Mike can too, that businesses generally evolve, and it's an organic evolution. And I say that because when I started with Mike, his demographic, the clientele, were in the fitness arena, competitive athletes, fighters, and powerlifters. But life has a way of really changing everything, including your business. And so to me, just looking at how you are now on Instagram and just being part of the new demographic, I think the big success is in taking your experience as a busy parent who has goals, and then embracing that and putting it out there into the public. And so your demographic seems to be busy parents who have fitness goals and a variety of fitness goals. And the thing about you and your business and the way that this has helped me get to that competitive platform is that you implement something that is long lasting, something that is conserving your health and thinking about longevity.
Yeah, totally. And like, I think aside from what you said, like the biggest thing is like showing parents that, like, whether they like whatever the goal is that it's possible, because I think once people have kids, sometimes those goals that they have kind of get lost in terms of like being able to attain them. So it's more so me like helping you guys believe in yourself and showing you that, like, hey, yes, we're parents, but like we can still have goals. And like for you, it's competing again. And I know for you, like, you're a very driven, goal-oriented person. So like, but like for other people, like whatever the goal is, sometimes I can get lost. And like, I think it's important just to show them that, like, hey, it is still very much possible, even with being a parent.
Yeah, and I want to speak to this and be extremely candid with people that Mike was with me during pregnancy, and coming from an athletic background, I was always a certain body type and a certain weight. And so a lot of that work that we did together during pregnancy was to puncture my mindset of like, oh, I'm going to be fat. I'm never going to get back. Like, I'm this and that, and so we were very good during my pregnancy, and then very, I would say, you were very comforting and allowed me to really take things at a pace postpartum, because I think I've said it multiple times. My stats are I'm 4'10", and in real life, I walk around existing between 117 to 120 pounds. And so postpartum, and so I had to gain a lot of weight just to house my ginormous kid. And
Mhm.
I was at 160. So that once I delivered, I think, you were like, you have some grace, Mel, like give yourself grace. And from 160, I think on my own, before we really kind of started getting on like a serious program, I got all the way down to 143.6. And so this will be surprising to Mike. I am going to check in, but like from 143.6, and that timeline is crazy because it happened so quickly. We got down to 113 pounds on the dot. I compete at
Oh,
114.6, which I was telling my team, like anybody in this space knows, like when we hit comp weight, that's like a fake weight. Like that's just a weight you want to like get naked, get on on that scale, and then you balloon back up and to what you normally are. But nobody really like exists and like hangs out at their comp weight. So that's been such a crazy journey, and I wanted you to talk more about like how did we get here?
yeah. I mean, I'm surprised myself. I think when we first started, I think it was back in maybe December. And you were at 143, like you're mentioning, and like I think you were looking at your first meet in April. And I was like, yeah, like I just would love to have more time, like I don't want us to rush this so that like for whatever reason, we weren't able to make it. I'd rather us have more time, be able to take this slow, so that we can, conserve or even improve your performance along the way, because we want to make sure that we're staying within like an appropriate rate of loss. Like, we could put you on a very low calorie diet and we could have you lose more than 1% of your body weight per week. But, with you being a competitive athlete, power lifter, like it's really not going to do you any justice, because now your training's going to suffer. And, the overarching goal, besides the meet, is actually qualifying for nationals. So I'm glad that we, decided to look for something in June, have more time, because now here we are 2 weeks out. And right now, yeah, you might be 113. But like, as you know, like weight fluctuates. And as we are now in maintenance, like we'll probably see your weight come up a little bit, but that'll be good, because now you're going to be going into this meet with like having more food, more energy. And I know with your previous experiences with weight cuts, and like how much of a mind fuck it was, and just how terrible you felt. Like, I think you're going to realize like how much better of an experience this is going to be. Not only like physically, but also mentally, because I know how much of a big part that plays like into your performance. Like, I'm sure thinking back to meets in the past where you just felt like crap, and like you had to do like a bath or whatever to get down to that weight, and then you start guessing like second guessing yourself, right? Like, man, like is this going to affect my performance? Like, how am I going to do meet day? And like, you want to go into that meet feeling like 100% confident in like your abilities, like what you did. And if you're not, like, you can almost psych yourself out mentally. So I'm stoked that we're here. And I think kind of like what you mentioned is like giving you that grace and knowing that like, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect. We just need to make sure we're doing things consistently most of the time. Whereas I think if we had the approach of like, hey, like every day needs to look like this, it would probably set you up for failure because like being a parent now, like as you know, like days are not always the same. Like things come up
Yeah.
and sometimes some self-sabotage can come in and some self-doubt, which can influence your, decisions around nutrition. Whereas like when you have that grace and like, okay, hey, like today like might not have been the best day, but hey, it's okay. I just gonna get back into my normal routine the next day. And that's kind of the most important part. And I think that is what obviously it's what you have done. Like I just give you the plan, right, Mel? Like, hey, these are the numbers. This is like the ranges that we want to try to hit. But it's you who's doing that work. And it's like it's the coaching part of it too, of what I was mentioning, that is kind of what helps kind of coast us along the way and inevitably is why we're here today.
Yeah, like I want to touch on several points that you brought up. Like I had come pre pregnancy, I had really difficult cuts as a female. Like I didn't start being competitive like until later on. I mean, now in the powerlifting world, you're seeing, these teenagers who are just killing it. So people in the community, in the powerlifting community, are like, oh my gosh, they're hitting all of these numbers so early in their career at 17, 18, 19 years old. They have so much more. Think about like how they'll be in their 20s or whatever. I came into powerlifting like later, and it
Right.
was difficult to get excited for competing because I was worried about, am I going to make weight? Like it's not enjoyable to be having to be in a sauna for hours or and like spinning, and then getting worried about like refueling in 2 hours so that you can like hit those numbers. And I think like what's extremely exciting about this meet is that I'm not worried about whether I'm going to make weight. If anything, now, like, I actually want to fill into my weight class because I'm under. Um, and I just want to do the, hit qualifying and forget about it because the real work comes between June and September. Additionally, as a parent, you touched on the we're not even we're not that old, but like when you're a parent, it really you put, I mean, your kids first, but you're having a hard time balancing or understanding that as a parent, I also have to put myself first, because if I don't put some things at the forefront, I can't be the best parent I can be for my kid. And what is very acutely apparent when you are a parent is that you've got tiny eyes and developing brains watching. And so the thought of my kid seeing me having a bad relationship with food, or being like, ultra crazy around competition, is not something that I want him to feel around these things. So I think that with you, I've definitely had a mind shift on how competition and athleticism fit in the new like lifestyle that I have with my kid. Like I want him to be active but enjoy food and be balanced, and
Yeah.
honest to God,
Yeah.
like for parents, it's like you've got to be healthy and active because your kid has no like stopping point. Like they're just go. Like
Totally. Yeah.
yeah.
Focusing on yourself or prioritizing yourself is extremely important because it allows you to show up as kind of your better self, is what I typically say, because when you feel good, you're going to show up good and you're going to bring that good energy, and your kids are going to see that, whether you've got one kid, two kids, no matter their age, like there's different different struggles at different ages with kids. And like one thing is always true is just that they have like an infinite amount of energy. So if we can, be our best self and be able to keep up with them, play with them, be active with them, and also, show them that like mommy has goals and mommy is going to be competing, and like, and there's no like stress around that area of it. And same with like the food part of it too, because these kids are absorbing everything. And like, yeah, they might be really young. Like my girls are 3 and 1. Winter's
Almost 11 months.
almost 11 months. So like there's still time, but like typically if we look at research, like what we do with our kids, like when they start to become teens is what they're going to bring into adulthood. So if we can set that good standard or relationship now, it's only going to set them up for success. But other thing that you mentioned was like, the weight cut, right? Like just how crappy you felt. And like the main goal is nationals. And like, I think what we've done over these past 6 months is what's going to set us up again for another really successful meet, because like we were talking before we were recording of like, your body needs to be get acclimated, right? It needs to be like we started from a very high weight, 140 something, and now we're at 113, whereas like post meet, like we'll probably hang out around 120 and like get a good solid amount of training around that weight, and then start to kind of descend at some point so that your body can acclimate to your training at this weight, rather than it just kind of like it's kind of been guessing over these past 6 months, like where are we going to end up, Mel? Like where
Yeah.
is it going to stop? But I think what we've done over these past 6 months is going to set us up for a really good meet come September for nationals.
Yeah, I mean, with that though, it's funny because Juan has said, okay, so you're really light. Your body just needs to get used to it, but better now than like on the platform or whatever. But
Right.
it's challenging, but it's also like, wow, the body does some crazy things. And so there's not been like a let in Juan's like training. He's just like, okay, well, your body's just going to catch up with these weights. And, but I'm like, fuck, like, I hope so. Cause this is like this is very, heavy and I'm going pretty slow right now.
Yeah. No, I think that's great that Juan's doing that. It's like he's pushing you and he's kind of testing the waters, right? Seeing where like your true potential is. Like now being a mom, like, things have changed physiologically,
Oh
like,
my God.
and I think it's good that he's pushing you in that aspect so that you can actually see like where you guys are at. Um, but yeah, I think Juan's an awesome coach. And just from what you've mentioned to me of like him always kind of checking in and like you bringing questions to me that he's asking, it shows me that like he cares, right? Which is important. And it's always good to have like those people in your corner that are like, whether it's questioning things, which is great, or also just kind of like saying, hey, what's going on the other side? Because sometimes that just doesn't happen.
Yeah. So like with your clients being parents, I'm seeing all these crazy transformations. They're just like able to embrace your, I would say like your not like your lectures, but your preaching because really like I
Yeah.
want to put out there it is a lot of here's a plan, but also like here's some positive like feedback and like let's change the perspective, which is so refreshing coming from a registered dietitian.
Yeah, I think so. Like one of the biggest things that I've noticed since transitioning to working with parents, because like you mentioned before, I was working with combat sport athletes or power lifters, is like it's just a different way of coaching. Like when we have a very specific goal in terms of like a weight class, a date, like things need to be like pretty on point. But if somebody's like, wanting to lose weight, wanting to improve their energy, wanting to kind of like find themselves again, like post pregnancy, like there's a lot more wiggle room. So there's a lot more um, kind of like guidance and like just reassurance along the way, because parents will try to do what they did prior to kids. And as you know now, with having a kid, like we just there's not the same amount of time in a day. Like we don't have the same amount of time to go and train, to go and meal prep, to go and like just do whatever we want to do. And same with like mental energy. Like towards the end of the day, like you're just kind of zapped and like you don't want to do anything. So I find that parents kind of set themselves up for failure by trying to do what they did prior to kids. So like big part of my approach is figuring out like what their lifestyle is like right now, what their family dynamics are like, what meal is like most important to them and their family, and then trying to work that into the program as best as we can so that they don't feel like this is taking anything away from like themselves or their family, and it's more so giving back to their family, like what I was mentioning and you brought up too about prioritizing yourself so you can show up to your family like at your best self. So I have a lot of one liners that I use with
Yeah.
my clients, just because it's things that are like actually true. And like, since I've been dieting over these past like almost 12 weeks, like I end up saying them to myself, like, what would I say to one of my clients if they were in this position? And it's still really applicable. But yeah, it's a lot of guidance, a lot of like empathy, and a lot of just kind of telling parents like, it's okay. Like one of my one liners is, it's not what we do some of the time, it's what we do most of the time. So like when kids sick, they stay home from preschool or daycare, and now the mom has to take care of the kid all day, and they just haven't been able to like really focus on their nutrition. Like it's okay, it's just one day,
Yeah.
whereas like if they didn't have that person telling them that, then they could get into the mindset of like, well, today's already been screwed. Like I might as well start again on Monday, or whenever the next like day comes, where if they've got me saying, hey, it's okay, like just kind of do your best today, control what you can, and then tomorrow, when time allows it, or when kids feeling better or the environment is more optimal, then just get back into it. And that's really what's most important, is like consistency, and
Yeah.
sometimes we get in our own way, and that's a big part of it too.
And I love, I don't know if you guys know this, but Mike started this weight loss himself, and I've been watching. And part of like, so you have your clients, and then they're watching you do basically the same thing. But what I find really cool is that you're doing these things on Instagram where you're like, okay, here's like a Big Mac, and you break it down the macronutrients, and it's like a million calories or whatever. And then you're like, okay, well, here's my version of a Big Mac. And then ultimately, if you're not really part of that, sphere, you see that Mike's version is actually way more filling, and the macronutrients just hit. Like there's more protein, there's better carbs, better fat, and it's more filling versus like this little Big Mac that's like a million calories. And so visually it's like, well, where are you going to feel the most satisfied and not like feel awful?
Yeah. And like, yeah, two things like you mentioned there is like filling. We want to make sure that we're eating food that's filling us up, especially if we're trying to lose weight, because if we feel filled up or satisfied, we're going to be in a much better place to kind of keep hunger at bay, which is going to help us to be adherent, and then kind of going back to consistency. And then foods that make us feel good, like if we want to eat food, and after we eat that food or that meal, we want to feel good afterwards. Whereas like, you go to big, you go to McDonald's, you have a Big Mac, you have fries, like you have like a 1,500, 1,600 calorie meal. Like, yes, it's really delicious, but like pay attention to how you feel after that meal. Like it's not probably not due to like the ingredients in the meal, but it's like the amount of food that you're having. So like I always say, like, when we have food or we have a meal, we want to feel good afterwards. We don't want to feel tired. We don't want to feel bogged down. We want that meal to give us like energy because that's what food is. Food is calories, and calories is what gives us energy. So yeah, like you mentioned, like big part of like my Instagram as of late, since I have been dieting, is just showing alternatives, and also showing people that like you can still enjoy foods that you like, and it's going to be something that's going to keep you full. So like one thing that has been a big approach of mine is like we don't necessarily need to eat less food to lose weight. We need to eat less calories. So a lot of the recipes, or I don't even really like calling them recipes because like they're more so showing people like meals that they can have with different components. But those meals are going to be higher in volume, but they're going to be less in calories. So you're eating more food, getting less calories compared to the alternative that you would get at like the restaurant or the fast food place.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for hanging out and talking about this journey you've had with me. And, we are 2 weeks out, and so let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm super stoked for you, Mel. Like 6 months ago when we chatted, I know that this was like the biggest goal, even like a year ago when we chatted, like prior to getting pregnant, you're like, I want to get back to the platform. I want to get back to the platform. And now here we are 2 weeks out. So I'm stoked to see you crush it. And then, like I said, I think what we've put in the work over these past 6 months is really going to set us up for nationals.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. And that wraps up the Lawyer Lifter podcast, aka Mel's Minutes. Catch this episode on Apple or Spotify. See you next time.